welcome to Connect and Collaborate. My name is Alex Hopkins. I'm taking over for Tammy Schaefer, your regular on-air producer for today, and we are focusing on healthcare this week. So we know that we have a business audience. We're focusing mostly on the business of healthcare for our audience out there. Today I have with me Arlen Meyers. He is a part of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, better known as SoPE, actually, SoPE. And we have Mehmet Kazgan. He is the founder of cliexa, which is an interesting platform. And so we will get right into that. Arlen, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So, Arlen, tell me exactly what SoPE entails. What is that?
Sure. So SoPE is a nonprofit, global biomedical and clinical innovation and entrepreneurship network. Okay. I like to refer to it as a cross between Rotary and Match.com.
Okay.
So basically, we're a international sandbox, and the basic idea, the mission of this organization is to help members get their ideas to patients. My experience was, and we can talk about that experience, that every scientist, engineer, and doctor has a really good idea. They don't know what to do with it, and it's unlikely they're going to learn what to do with it during their formal training. Unfortunately, the medical schools and in my view, the medical education establishment is not addressing that gap. We're making some strides to improve that, but in general, there's still this problem. So we created the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs as a nonprofit to fill that gap. We have an international chapter network. The members come from all different walks of life, not just physicians. It's an open innovation network. And we basically provide education, resources, networks, mentors, experience, and social support through various social media channels to help entrepreneurs or biomedical or clinical entrepreneurs get their ideas to patients. Interesting.
So what brought this idea about? Did you just wake up one day and you were like, I don't like how this is going. Obviously you mentioned that it's not covered in the medical education system, right?
Right.
To get these ideas down.
Right.
What was the tipping point for you?
Anger.
Anger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's an interesting tipping point.
So this comes basically out of anger and revenge. And
okay.
By that I mean that I'm a academic ear, nose, and throat surgeon by training.
Okay.
I spent 40 years at the Anschutz Medical Campus and still do, but in a clinical role I was an academic ear, nose, and throat doc.
Okay.
And as part of my career progression, I was involved in a project that resulted in several of us creating a device that optically detects cancer.
Wow.
Now, that subsequently led to trying to commercialize it and all the elements that go with it. Yeah. Intellectual property, legal, money, spin-outs, all that stuff. And my experience led me to realize like I said, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and it still is a good idea, but no one was teaching me how to do this. It was unlikely I was going to learn how to do it. So, as I said, I got angry, and I said, this isn't right. We have all these ideas, and there's just no way to translate them and get them out into the community in a faculty situation, so we created this entity to help people do it. And now we're the largest in the world.
Fantastic. So do you know of any other models out there that are trying to be like this? This is the first I've ever heard of anything along these lines, personally.
Well, it's unique. I mean, nothing's new under the sun, and nothing is unique. But the way we're approaching this, I think, is a bit different.
Yeah.
There are, fortunately, other physician entrepreneurial endeavors, activities that are going on around the world, not quite exactly like ours. But since we created this thing and we spun it out as a nonprofit in January of 2011, subsequently we've seen, as you've probably spoken with people on the show, about accelerators, about generators, about incubators, about ecosystems. So there's lots of different ways people are trying to facilitate the transfer of basic ideas and discoveries to the market. The way we're approaching it tends to be more focused on education.
Okay.
And because I'm a professional educator, that's kind of what I'm comfortable doing. But we also realize that it takes a lot more than just education to get someone to the point where they're able to get an idea to a patient. And that's why we include networks, mentors, experience, access to resources, social support, websites, conferences around the country, that kind of stuff. Education alone isn't going to get you there.
Well, tell me real quick, how can I be a part of SoPE?
It's pretty simple. You go to the website. It's www.sopenet, SOPEnet.org, and you join. Costs $75 a year.
A year.
We have, yeah.
That's better than a Costco membership,
exactly.
really.
And I will guarantee you, and Mehmet can confirm, that if you come to the meeting, you will absolutely eat more bagels and drink more coffee than $75 over the course of a year.
Confirmed.
So you really get a pretty reasonable bang for the buck. The main value proposition is that you collaborate and interface with other people. It's like a big dating service.
Okay.
So you're in the same sandbox with people who are all trying to get an idea to a patient. You have a mutual interest. That's how we met. We can tell the story, and maybe Mehmet can tell the story, but it's a good example of how this network results in value.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. How does all this translate into user-defined value, and in this particular case, patient user-defined value or system-defined value? So maybe Mehmet, you can tell her the story.
I actually would love to hear that. That's where I was going. You led me right there.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with SoPE, and what has it meant to you?
To me, basically, I'm a young entrepreneur, not by age, but when we started, to be honest with you, and then in Colorado, it's actually a small community, believe it or not. You know people who are trying to do things on healthcare, and because of the challenges that everyone is facing, the challenges are the same for majority of the people in the area. So you're trying to get along with the challenges by help. And especially if you're in healthcare, you're looking around people who are experts in the area. So I met Arlen through a network, and then I heard about SoPE, and then I'm like, wow, that sounds interesting. Physician entrepreneurship, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
By concept, you think about it, because you know how physicians actually get started with their life, go to medical school, and Arlen actually argues with that all the time. That whole anger comes from there. You can tell you dedicate your life to treat patients, and then at the end of the day you come up with billion ideas that can fix healthcare or the system. We all have this, but in healthcare, coming up with an idea and apply it and validate it, it takes a long time. So I said this might be a good network to get started and see what other people are facing with. Maybe networking with them will actually solve the problems for me too, or help me solve the problems. So I got involved with Arlen, and then SoPE, obviously, and definitely I second that. I think I ate $1,000 worth of bagels so far, so that's really paid off. But other than that, the real deal is really, it's all about, as an entrepreneur, meeting people to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So that might take sometimes by yourself 10 years, but if you meet the right person who can even tell you what they have been through. And first time I told this to Arlen, he's like, so how can I help you? He told me that as we worked together. And I said, I just want to avoid the mistakes along the way. If I can avoid them as much as I can, I will get enough help from people around me to tell me what to do. But I want people to tell me what not to do. That's how I got involved. So yeah, I got part of it. And I benefited a lot from it by meeting people, being part of the meetups, and we actually hosted several of them ourselves, working with other people. And like Arlen said, the community is not about meeting physicians. It's about physicians, the people who work with the physicians, who work in the system. And you know, it's great to see other people facing the same challenges. It's like a support group. And it's really great that it's also a way of giving back to the community from what you learn, or what you're facing with, or what kind of challenges. I love to help other people because I am getting that help too. So that's how I started.
I love that. So I just want to reiterate, anyone can join the SoPE network, right?
Anybody. It doesn't make a difference what the initials after your name are, your background. The whole point the way we conceptualized this organization from the very beginning was it had to be an open network because we were very, and I'm still convinced, sick care or any other industry, it's very unusual to be able to fix it from inside.
Right.
You take any, I don't care whether it's aerospace or biotech or finance or media, you get stuck in a system, and it's very difficult. You have blind spots, and it's very difficult to fix it from inside. That particularly applies, in my opinion, to sick care. And I call it sick care because we have a sick care system. We have a $3.3 trillion healthcare spend. 93% of it goes to taking care of sick people, not healthy people, making people healthy. The goal is to transform the sick care system into a healthcare system through the deployment of innovation, which is really what our core vision is. But that's not going to happen without a whole lot of work. So until we get there, let's just call a spade a spade. We spend trillions on taking care of sick people, not chronic disease management, not wellness, not disease prevention, not public health, etc. But that's basically the goal, which incidentally fits into what cliexa and Mehmet's trying to do. That's the big picture. How do we use this to migrate more of sick care to disease prevention, patient-reported outcomes, awareness of early detection, social determinants, the whole list that goes on that determines whether someone's going to get sick or not.
I would like to hit on cliexa, but I'm going to make people wait until we get into the next segment to talk about that one.
Yeah.
But you did mention preventing mistakes, and that was part of the reason why SoPE was so important to you. What are some of the big mistakes that you think people have made along the way?
I'll pass it to Mehmet. I mean, I'll give you my mistakes, but I'm interested in your top three or two or one.
Yeah, give us your top three mistakes. Yeah.
So, as an entrepreneur, the first one I'm gonna start with, like, I think the biggest mistake I made is, like, I think I have a great idea. So even with that thing, I think you gotta start validating everything you think of. That's one thing I didn't start doing in the beginning. That's a mistake, because even an idea should be validated. So I started to validate it, but then validation starts from one angle, because let's say I have an idea in healthcare. Who do I validate it with? Should I go to the patients or the target customers? Should I go to people in physicians? I think my mistake was looking at from one angle and started to look into talking to mostly with doctors. So we'll talk about cliexa later, but in healthcare, Arlen mentioned there are a lot of different segments of customers you're looking at. The customers are patients, which is I think, highly I would say, estimated group of people that we do not focus on that a lot, right? We say we're going to find a solution for patients, we're going to make their life better, but we don't focus on that. That's what I did too. I'm like, okay, I'm going to fix their problem, but let me work with doctors and see how I can work with them, because they run the system. Well, not really. They actually are guiding the system. So again, going back, I think the first mistake I made, I didn't validate my idea. Now, the second one was really planning, because you look at a roadmap for yourself. I'm like, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to validate it, I'm going to go ahead and try to find customers. And it's really hard to plan out. It's challenging because you need money. Well, it's a vicious circle. You need to get the money to run something, or you got to validate it to find money. So I didn't plan really well up front, and it comes with experience too. You can't just read books and try to practice what you talk to people or read from the books as well. So I didn't plan well up front, which is pretty common for any entrepreneur, I think. I think the third one is I focused on more on the product. Again, I think this is the agile principle I was learning, but I wasn't applying it. I was trying to focus on a beautiful product that everyone would love and everyone would use, and so I can go ahead and sell it. And it's, again, typical entrepreneur mistake. People, again, focus on the product rather than their customers, because they will tell you what they need sometimes really well, then you build it. So instead of coming up with a great product, you start with iteration. So these are common mistakes, and again, I'll reiterate for last two, you really need to experience the fact, you get familiar with the community, what your customers are all about. So I think being part of a community like SoPE will help you along the way, that you meet the right people who will guide you along to avoid those mistakes.
Fantastic. So from your experience, what are some of the mistakes that you see on your end or have made?
Yeah, so the ones that I've made and see, basically I break down into people, process, and purpose.
Okay.
So the people part is, the biggest mistakes I've made is just frankly doing business with the wrong people. Because it's all, I mean, we've had this experience working together. If you just don't trust the person, if the person doesn't deliver, if the person doesn't show up, if the person doesn't do what they say they're going to do, if they're just not straight with you, if they don't look you in the eye, it just doesn't work. So save yourself a lot of heartburn. It's a lot like dating and marriage and all the analogies. Save yourself the heartburn. If at the first meetup or coffee or whatever, things just don't feel right, walk.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Gut instinct.
Just don't do it. Just go somewhere else. The second, so that's the people part. The second part is the process part, which Mehmet has alluded to. But I think the biggest mindset in terms of the process, and what I see, is people tend to want to be too much of a problem solver instead of a problem seeker. They don't understand the problem. They don't understand the customer. They don't understand the jobs, pains, and gains that the customer wants you to do with your product. And particularly in my world with doctors, scientists, and engineers, they're very solving focused. They're all about the product. And all the details and the functionality and all that other business. They really have a blind spot when it comes to understanding the customer, which alludes to his comment. You have to understand the customer need. You have to do what it takes: validation, value proposition design, business model canvas, lean startup methodology, all the stuff that he's used to doing. So that's the second process mistake. The third P is purpose. And this is hard work, this business of entrepreneurship. And unless you are pretty strongly motivated to do this and to overcome the inevitable hurdles that you will run into, if you don't have that little voice in your head telling you, keep doing it, figure out another way, get around it, do the end around, whatever, you're not going to be successful. So I use the phrase, this has to be personal, but you don't take it personally. So in other words, he's got a story, I've got a story, I told you about my story, why I'm kind of driven to do this. So you have to make it personal so that it links to an internal motivator that continues to source your energy, but you realize inevitably you will fail. So you don't take it personally. You know, it's like You've Got Mail in the movie. You know, don't take it personally. It's business. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I think those are the three biggest mistakes that people make.
Interesting. I enjoy your perspective on that, especially the business. Don't take it personally, but you do need that personal motivating factor, right? That's got to be driven.
Right.
Most entrepreneurs have some fire.
Right. And I would
anger.
And I would also mention that some of those motivations are dysfunctional. In other words, there's a lot of entrepreneurial psychopathology, and there's a lot of physician psychopathology. But there's a flip side to that. I mean, the dysfunction on the other side translates into, so for example, if you're a pain in the neck, persistent, annoying ADHD person that some people think I might be, the flip side of that is I get stuff done.
Right.
So
as flighty as you might seem.
Yeah. So you have to kind of balance one side with the other and just accept people. And there's all kinds of stuff coming out now about depression in entrepreneurs, about narcissistic entrepreneurs.
Now that one I believe. No, I'm just,
and
just kidding.
And of course the topic of the day is sexual harassment, and that's a whole nother program. But you know, I'm interested in your thoughts. What do you think of that, Mehmet?
No, I definitely agree with what Arlen said. Actually, if you look at the big picture, we are also talking about the same things from different angles, right?
Yeah.
So the anger that he mentioned, it actually resonates me in a different way, that I was angry about myself, that I could have done something by myself, like start a business and follow it. But he said something really important about motivation. I call it passion, but often what we actually mix this. So there's a flip side of Arlen. I think we clicked really well at that point, as getting something done. It actually translates into fail fast. So you got to do something, fail fast, and then you can get back up quickly, and then you can actually recover from those mistakes pretty quick. So I usually call it, from my side, it's website development, website creation theory. So I'll just tell you, I love that because it's mine. That's why I love it. So you can see the narcissism comes out. I'm trying to give you an example about narcissism right here. But for example, the websites come along. You're like, I'm going to build a website for myself. Okay, so what should I have? About me, about this, about contact information. So you spend about 3 days to figure out what you would put in your website. Versus someone tells you to get something done. Like, I'm going to go back to Arlen's point. You call it ADHD. I think I am that way too. I don't know. But you get something done. Let's put something together. And goes back again to agile methodology today we all talk about. Let's do iterations. Why don't we just start with a homepage first and see what happens? Build that up, get some feedback, and then after that you start basically improving it in different pieces. So failing fast is great. Now going back to his other point, one last point I'm going to make on this one is, it's the resilience. So you will fail fast, you will come back up and keep trying and keep trying. If you believe, which is, he mentioned, make it personal, so that you just keep standing up, keep doing it. You fail again, you keep doing it. If you're persistent, you will actually get to that success, which that feedback you're going to get when you're failing shouldn't be personal.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fail fast system, that is not something I've heard of, but I do appreciate that, because if you get it over, get it out of the way, one, it's going to hurt less if it happens again.
True.
And two, you can feel that right away.
There's another aspect to this, and
Yeah.
and that is, why do some people learn from their mistakes and other people don't? And there's this lure about the entrepreneurial learn from your mistakes and try, but don't try the same way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It actually turns out that psychologically, the answer is because you took personal responsibility for the mistake.
Okay.
And if you blame the mistake on somebody else or the system, or you're the victim, or you substitute all these things, and you don't take personal responsibility, like I created a company that I made all the mistakes. I didn't do good market research. I got in bed with the wrong people. I really didn't know what the heck I was doing. And it failed. And I'm saying, well, how come it failed? And I'm pointing to all these people and the system and this and that, when the fact is I really just needed to look in the mirror. And if you accept that and you don't beat yourself up too much about it,
Right.
then you move on and you try to learn something from it. But the notion is, lots of people make mistakes, but they keep making the same mistake because they don't take personal responsibility for what happened.
That is such a great aspect, and I really appreciate that. We are here with Arlen Meyers and Mehmet Kazgan talking about SoPE, the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Mehmet's successful platform that he's got going on, cliexa. SoPE, Arlen helped him get that together. And just stay with us. We'll be right back in a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying with us here on Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, taking over for Tammy Schaefer, your regular on-air producer. And I have with me Arlen Meyers, who is a part of SoPE. Actually, you are the founder, are you not?
Yeah, I was one of the co-founders.
Co-founder, yes. SoPE is the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, and that's SoPE. And we have a success story that came about from SoPE, and that's Mehmet Kazgan with cliexa. So we talked in the last segment about, failures and failing fast and owning your mistakes so that you can set yourself up for entrepreneurial success. So let's talk about the success part of it, you guys.
Sure. Like I'm gonna get started with Arlen here because I want to hear the start of the story, how we get involved, how he has been seeing the company actually getting where we are right now. I wouldn't call it a success, hopefully yet not, but we'll see. Then I will actually kind of allude to it a little bit later after we meet. So why don't you get started out?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I mean, I come at this from multiple perspectives. One is as an entrepreneur trying to create my own companies or whatever. The other is as an advisor or as a member of an advisory board or a board of directors or something like that. And I think it's important to understand what it is you're being asked to do as an advisor. So the story played out that, as Mehmet mentioned, we met. What do you do? What do you do? Tell me about your thing. I told him about my thing. What are your needs? He told me. I gave him some feedback. One thing leads to another, and so now I'm the chief medical officer for the company.
Oh, fun.
Just as a way of disclosure, but I think it sets the stage. So my question is, what is your next critical success factor? What, in the big picture, what is it that you need, what's the end? Work from the end in mind, work backwards, and tell me the next thing that you need to accomplish. And then I have a conversation with him about, well, do I think I can help you? Do I think I can help you achieve that next critical success factor? And how would we do that, and what would be my role, and what are the expectations, and what are the benchmarks and timelines, and let's kind of clarify the expectation. I shared my background, experience, networks, connections, whatever, and we thought, and so the answer to that question, as he mentioned, was nailing the value proposition and validating the elements of the business model. It really wasn't about finding money. It was about understanding the problem, be a problem seeker before you become a problem solver.
Right.
So let me try to help you connect to some people. Let me give you my clinical experience. Let me tell you what I've tried to do with this and didn't work. And that's basically how this played out. So you kind of take it from one step to the next. Now, there's a lot I could say about how to be an advisor to a company, and likewise what the entrepreneur should look for in an advisor in a company. But there are lots of different things that an advisor can provide. They can provide monitoring the environment. They can provide connections. They can provide strategic direction. They can provide their own money. They can provide specific domain expertise, et cetera, et cetera. But you constantly have to revisit the relationship, because once the next critical success factor is achieved, now you move to the next critical success factor, and the skill set of the advisor may not fit for the next critical success factor.
Okay.
So some people are really good at business development, at market surveillance, at market research, at validating these things, but they're not really good at raising money. So if you nailed step one, and I refer to this as fail it, nail it, scale it, and sail it. So you fail it, and like he said, you fail fast.
Right.
You finally identify a value proposition and a business model that works. You nail it. You scale that model, and then you exit, sail it. And different people have different skill sets, including the entrepreneur as well as the advisor, as to how they can help you get there. So it's a constant iteration and a constant interesting revisiting process.
Well, with any business, right? Anytime you start a business, you're constantly looking at growth, right? Mm-hmm. So that fits in perfectly. Yeah. So what did you take from this?
So a lot. Obviously, what you do as an entrepreneur, that progress actually story that he said, well, fail and basically nail it. So I think what I was trying to do is, like, I think I have my partners. We started as a disease management protocols. We took FDA regulatory process. Then I came up with the idea of patient report outcomes, quantification of this information. I have a great idea. Well, you need to find good people around you to get you to the success. Sometimes it's all about a team, right? Who you work with, who you're guided with. So Arlen comes into cliexa not only as a functioning chief medical officer with his background, but he's a big validator for me. So what I like about him, which most people I talk to him also like, some people don't like about him, is like he's super straightforward. Mm-hmm. If you think that I am not doing something right, you tell me. I don't, and I say it in different panels all the time. I don't need nurture. I need torture. So give me what I need so I can fail fast. If I'm gonna take it personal, let's break up, and I will recover fast. That's how
I'll
it's
eat
gonna
my
work.
Ice cream and get over
There
it.
you go. There you go. And chocolate, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So that's how we started, and along with it, and Arlen actually proved himself in many ways, right? So when I say proved, so when you're looking at a person that will help you, he's not proving himself. He's proving what really he can do for the company. And I'll tell you this: if you're an entrepreneur, you will see a lot of fluff out there. I can do this for you. I can help you. That includes me as a company. I can tell you stories about myself too. But I'm calling you prove yourself as you actually say something and you make it happen, right? So Arlen, we started with it. I am seeing him as a mentor, as an advisor, as a functioning board member as well in many ways. And through the connections, he's trying to see what I am thinking that will make a fit for the company or an angle. I validate it. So the first thing we started to is actually coming to that value proposition, because he's in the healthcare. What I'm trying to do should make sense to him first, not only clinically, but also he's teaching this in graduate level, entrepreneurship. He knows the theoretical value, but he's also an entrepreneur himself. He's well respected, and the words coming out of his mouth are not fluff. You can see, you can tell, you can work, you can feel the meetups, the SoPE. So that helped me a lot along the way. So far, it's still helping. So that's how we started, and he became the chief medical officer. I call it more innovation officer for me, because I think he can validate all these steps, what I'm going through, validating that proposition, value proposition, and as you go along. So.
Lovely. So I guess just real quick before we get more
Sure.
into cliexa, I have a question. So there's tons, right, of groups out there that are entrepreneurial focused. Mm-hmm. Tons of ways to get peer help and things like that. And while I realize that SoPE is more of a physician, medical, healthcare background, focus, thank you. What sets that apart from an entrepreneurial perspective that you feel like you're getting better feedback than you would from, say, I don't want to use anybody's name, but a different entrepreneurial group?
Sure. I will just start very quickly. I will let Arlen also answer it from his angle. I have seen a lot of them. So one of the things you do is you become part of, and that's what we advise to others too. Just go be part of and get a feel of what these communities are doing. To me, SoPE has a focus. Every meetup, you have a company or you have a focus that you talk about, and then people are coming there with that end result, expecting there's going to be some conversation around this framework. UC Health comes here, talk about D2E, or cliexa comes, talks about, patient-reported outcomes. You're not just going there for networking. You're going with a focus, right? And that focus is super straightforward. It's healthcare focus. Communities are helping you in multiple segments, and I really love to focus as an entrepreneur, which I am also challenged myself. How can I focus on? So there's a focus. Let's focus on, like he said, let's focus on being a seeker instead of a solution. So every time you go to a SoPE community meeting, if you can make it, then you will see there's actually a problem-seeking focus every time.
Okay.
That's one of the things I have seen. There's more, but I'm going to let Arlen kind of talk about it too.
Well, I don't want to imply that we're necessarily better than anybody else.
Well, it's definitely got a certain focus, so
right,
that
sure.
that
but
makes a difference.
we come at it with a certain perspective. As I mentioned, first of all, it's an open innovation network. So anybody, any walk, we're not. There's some, particularly in some domains, where basically it's just a bunch of techies, and that's okay for what it is. Or it's just a bunch of doctors, but that's, to me, the blind leading the blind.
Right.
So the more coherence, interdisciplinary collaboration, communication, I think the better the result. So we tend to stress that, and there are other groups in town, for example, the Prime Health Collaborative, which I was involved with and still am. They're making efforts to create a pretty wide, broad brush ecosystem. And whether it was in biotech at Anschutz, or whether nano or photonics, or you just go down the list, aerospace, everyone's trying to create these interdisciplinary, eclectic, outside-in ecosystems. So I think that's an important element. I also think there's an important element of leadership and how these things evolve. Now, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying that my observation is that ecosystems have a life cycle.
Right.
And that life cycle is in part dependent on the leadership. So I think it's a leadership challenge, and again, whether it's the aerospace community in town or whether it's manufacturing, it's about leadership and sustaining that objective, setting the vision, creating the strategies, aligning the incentives, the usual stuff. So I think that's an important element. And finally, I would say that the differences between the different ecosystems have to do with culture. So what does it feel like when you go to these things? And Mehmet indicated he gets a certain feel for going to these. We tend to be pretty fun. We tend to be pretty collaborative. We make fun of each other. There's a lot of back and forth.
Good cheese.
There's a lot of telling truth to authority. It's not about patting you on the back for the great job that you did. We're like he just said.
Yeah.
We're trying to help you understand your blind spots. And I've been there. I've done this. Don't do that. And that comes from my background as a surgeon, as an academic surgeon. I spent my entire career teaching people how to do surgery. Note, I didn't say I taught them how to be surgeons. It's the same thing in entrepreneurship. I can't teach you how to be an entrepreneur. I can teach you how to do entrepreneurship. I can't teach you how to be a surgeon. I can teach you how to do surgery. Don't cut that. Don't go there. Do this before you do that. This is what you can expect after you do this. It's the same sort of thing.
Okay.
So I think a lot of it has to do with the focus of the organization and the ecosystem. It has to do with leadership and its sustainability, and it has to do with the culture of the organization.
Wonderful. That's a great plug for SoPE. Yeah. I like it.
and bagels.
Yes,
and bagels. Right. And right. We have very good bagels.
You guys are making me so hungry. I'm going to have to get a bagel after this.
Right.
Watch out, Starbucks, I'm coming. Right. So tell me, so cliexa obviously was born from, you got your feedback. You had a great group of people, helping you, criticizing you, essentially, right? But in the right way, constructive criticism. So tell us more about exactly what cliexa is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So cliexa is hard to say sometimes for people. Some people actually have trouble saying, is that Kleenex? No, I'm like, no, definitely not. So cliexa stands for Clinical Excellence Algorithms. Actually, that's how I came up with the name.
Okay.
Which first time I thought it was interesting. So we started the idea 4 years ago, meeting, first time, that's how I got into healthcare, meeting three of my partners. Both, they're all doctors in different areas. I didn't realize that they're all chronic care management experts actually in different areas. One is a rheumatologist, one is a gastroenterologist, and an immunologist in different areas. So we started disease management algorithms, and again, like I mentioned quickly, that was an FDA regulatory path. We applied. That was the first chronic pain we started to deal with FDA, obviously. And then I said, I don't want to wait for this. And then I came up with the idea of like, oh, look, I have 3 doctors on board. Is there a way that we can actually quantify the patient's symptoms, disease activity into numbers? And so we do it in multiple disease segments, but I'm just going to give you an example. We were just talking about it before we stepping in today too. Pain is one of them. Or for rheumatoid arthritis, like the joint scoring. The interesting thing is people have done a lot of research, clinical evaluation, like how can I get Alex's disease activity into a number? Instead of you tell the story for 15 minutes, when you see your doctor in a short amount of time, and I haven't seen you don't see your doctor in some cases for some diseases for months, and then now we have 15 minutes to figure that out, tell that problem to the doctor, and optimization of your treatment come back in 6 months. Well, if the doctor can look at a scale and say, oh, your pattern is going like this, and chronic condition is about matching that to a medication screen, and you see what the pattern is on a clinically validated model, there you have it. So we started with rheumatoid arthritis. We started a pilot with Kaiser Permanente, and it has been proven really well. Doctors love it. Patients provided a lot of great feedback. And the vision is to scale it out to multiple chronic conditions. We have already COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. We have one for inflammatory bowel diseases, but again, if you scale it out, you need help with different clinical and business experts to help you and expand it, and we are trying to do that with different partnerships.
So so are these just clinical, sorry, I'm looking for a better way to say this. So is it just clinical experiments?
So it's an app, right?
It is an app.
It's an
okay.
app. So I should have started that way. So I'm still learning how to sell my company. So it's basically a mobile application. You give this opportunity for the patient to track their symptoms on a mobile device.
Okay, so similar to like tracking your exercise.
Exactly.
Okay,
but
I'm with you.
Exactly. But the difference and the other layer on it is now I track it, but I need to track it in a way, and then I quantify the outcome, and my disease activity score is 5.
Okay.
So Arlen would know as a doctor what 5 is for me. You wouldn't know.
Right.
So he knows, and we are actually giving feedback to the patients what 5 means comparing to the others too with different features. But without you even seeing the patient, the doctor, you can basically report your symptoms, and we transmit that to your care teams right away. If there is an alert that they should call you, like if you're a rheumatoid arthritis patient and you have like joint pain flares coming through your scores, doctor can call you. I know this is going to end up in an emergency room. You get a call from your nurse saying that just take 2 Advil, you're going to be fine.
How lovely.
Yeah, so that's how we are using these models that doctors already use or know or researched before, and put it into the mobile platform in that framework, transmit over to the EMR, and then they can see those things.
And this really gets back to this notion of user-defined value, because in healthcare, the traditional model is, I'm the doctor, I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to determine whether it worked or not. Well,
it's mostly a trial and error system.
Yeah, but so let's try something different. How about if we want to find out whether something is helping a patient, we ask them?
What?
Which is right? So that's essentially the simplistic understanding of what this is about. And it doesn't just apply, and it's a broader understanding of entrepreneurship, because it's about creating user-defined value through the deployment of innovation. Well, the user-defined value could be a student. Why don't we measure, for example, student-defined outcomes? Instead of the teacher saying, here's what you learned and here's the grade, why don't we ask the student, what did you learn, in real time during the semester? It could be weekly, it could be daily, it could be monthly. It's the same thing with asking customer feedback. Did you like the experience when you got home after you used the product? It's the same thing with patients. Are you getting better? Tell us how things are going. How is your pain? How is your redness? How is your anxiety? How is your depression? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's a much broader concept. We're just reducing it down to healthcare. And I give you another example. This really doesn't have to be all that complicated.
No, this is a great concept. I love this because I can say in my own words exactly how I feel, and it's concentrated and it's got an algorithm, and then you send it into doctor language and they understand what I'm saying. So when I go for that 15-minute interview and I say, well, my knees hurt, and he's like, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, was that a stabbing pain? Was that a shooting pain? I can say that, but he's got real-time algorithms.
And we'll make it even easier. You don't even have to tell us, because if you allow us to remote sense things, we can find out how you're doing without you even telling us. So, for example, if you have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, if you have certain respiratory diseases that compromise your ability to breathe, well, it turns out that if a doctor treats you for a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, the standard way to measure whether you're actually getting better or not is to do pulmonary function testing. We have you blow in this machine and we measure a bunch of stuff, And it either gets better or it doesn't. Well, it turns out that a pretty simple way to measure the effectiveness of a treatment is to measure how far you can walk in 6 minutes. Well, we have pedometers, we have Fitbits, we have all kinds of, we have iPhones, we have accelerators. So we really don't have to make this all that complicated. So all you have to do is send us that information and we can find out whether you're getting any better. And if you're not, we're not going to give you an appointment in 6 months if you can get it. He mentioned rheumatoid arthritis. You know, there aren't that many rheumatologists in the United States.
No, there really aren't.
So you may wait literally 6-8 months if you can find one to see that person. Meanwhile, you're taking a $3,000 a month medicine that may not be doing you any good.
And it's chronic pain. It's a painful
Never
disease.
goes away.
Yeah,
the majority of them.
Which is how it translates, and I'll let Mehmet take it from here, is like how the challenge to business and the challenge to the health system is how do we improve the value? Improve quality per unit price. So how does cliexa save the employer money?
True. So I'm just going to be quick. That's what he's good at. He sets the environment up really well for that. Right. So the stakeholder is the patient. You basically give an opportunity to translate your symptoms quickly. For the doctor, like he said, some rheumatologists don't even have time or enough. We don't have enough rheumatologists. So if I can actually monitor, instead of seeing 22 patients per day, today's average in Colorado per doctor, per rheumatologist here. So instead of that, if I can get that information in front of me with significant data, real time, but the data that I need, I can actually take care of 60 people by having my team looking at what we are actually trying to figure out and look at what that data means to us. Okay, now I can actually manage 60 people, actually in a better way, more effective way. I can make money, more money as a clinic, but the real deal is we can save money by avoiding emergency costs, avoiding medications that you can actually diagnose and then early discover problems along the way. And at the end of the day, it goes back to the better patient care. So
and prescribing drugs that don't work.
Exactly. In the long run, that costs everybody lots of money, right?
True.
Yeah.
And the analytics, the data, how it's going to help feature all the data coming together. At the end of the day, you need to get that defined value from the clinician. You need to get that from the patient, combine this, and provide a product that helps both sides, pretty much.
Where can I find your app?
Online. So you can, actually, we have free versions that you can use, download. There are 3 of them, actually. We just published the pain management version of it, came out last week. So go to iOS, Android, and just download from Apple and Google Play stores for rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel diseases, and the pain version of it.
But it's cliexa.
Yeah.
CLIEXA.
There you go.
Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I really appreciate you being a part of our healthcare week. And you know what? We're looking forward. We're going to have Arlen on sometime later in the year. So
yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. And check us out at cobrt.com. We've got radio shows, anything you could want. And we will have this show on Friday morning. So we will see you tomorrow. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.